Now when Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister, and said to Jacob, "Give me children, or else I die." And Jacob's anger was aroused against Rachel, and he said, "Am I in the place of God, who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" So she said, "Here is my maid Bilhah. Go in to her, and she will bear a child on my knees, that I also may have children by her." Then she gave him Bilhah her maid as wife, and Jacob went in to her. My name's Arthur. Thank you for joining me as we continue reading in Genesis chapter 30, how the children of Israel came to be. Jacob went to his uncle Laban's place to get a wife. He saw this beautiful young lady, Rachel. He worked hard for 7 years to pay the dowry and marry her. But when he woke up in the morning, he had been deceived. Laban had given him Rachel's older sister, Leah, and Leah had deceived him on the wedding night. When he protested, Laban said, "Well, you can have Rachel also, but you must work for another 7 years." And so suddenly this old bachelor has 2 wives. One who is beautiful to behold, who he pays a lot of attention to. The older one, the senior one, who is not so beautiful. There is an issue with her eyes. He neglects. And so the Lord gives her 4 sons. But to Rachel the Lord gave no sons, for children come from the Lord. Rachel was envious. The issue was, though, that Jacob had not been even-handed in his treatment of his 2 wives. He had not honoured them both equally. And this was the source of the strife. This was why the Lord favoured Leah and not Rachel. But Rachel's getting very frustrated. "Give me children or else I die." Showing favouritism does not engender peace. And of course Jacob can't do anything about it. He's done all that he can, but it is God who gives the children. And so Rachel gives to Jacob her maid Bilhah, just as Sarah had given her maid Hagar to Abraham. But that had not turned out really well, in the sense that there was strife between Ishmael and Isaac, and particularly between their descendants. But she is desperate, and so Jacob takes Bilhah. And we continue the story in Genesis chapter 30. Now when Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister and said to Jacob, "Give me children or else I die." Jacob's anger was aroused against Rachel, and he said, "Am I in the place of God, who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" So she said, "Here is my maid Bilhah. Go in to her, and she will bear a child on my knees, that I also may have children by her." Then she gave him Bilhah her maid as wife, and Jacob went in to her. And Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. Then Rachel said, "God has judged my case, and he has also heard my voice and given me a son." Therefore she called his name Dan. And Rachel's maid Bilhah conceived again, and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, "With great wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister, and indeed I have prevailed." So she called his name Naphtali. When Leah saw that she had stopped bearing, she took Zilpah her maid, and gave her to Jacob as wife. And Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a son. Then Leah said, "A troop comes." So she called his name Gad. And Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. Then Leah said, "I am happy, for the daughters will call me blessed." So she called his name Asher. Now Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field, and brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." But she said to her, "It is a small matter that you have taken away my husband. Would you take away my son's mandrakes also?" And Rachel said, Therefore he will lie with you tonight for your son's mandrakes. Then Jacob came out of the field in the evening, and Leah went out to meet him and said, You must come in to me, for I have surely hired you with my son's mandrakes. And he lay with her that night. And God listened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. And Leah said, God has given me my wages, because I have given my maid to my husband. So she called his name Issachar. Then Leah conceived again, and bore Jacob a sixth son. And Leah said, God has endowed me with a good endowment. Now my husband will dwell with me, because I have borne him 6 sons. So she called his name Zebulun. Afterward she bore a daughter, and called her name Dinah. Then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her, and opened her womb. And she conceived, and bore a son, and said, God has taken away my reproach. So she called his name Joseph, and said, The Lord shall add to me another son. And may the Lord bless these words to us this morning. So here we have, in a period of 7 years it seems, the birth described of 12 children, 11 boys and 1 girl. Now it's possible the girl was born a little bit later, and there would be 1 more son born to Rachel a little bit later. So this was a very intense household. No doubt the 2 mothers lived in separate tents or in separate houses, and the rivalry continued between them throughout this period of time as the children were young. So we have the story of young Reuben collecting some flowers in the field and bringing them in, and Rachel noticing the flowers and asking could she have them. And so they do a deal, Leah saying, well, if my husband comes home to me tonight, you can have the flowers. And so when Jacob comes home, for all of this time he is working very hard in the field, when Jacob comes home, he spends the night with Leah, and the Lord blesses Leah again with another child, Issachar. And so of the 12 sons of Jacob, we have 6 born to Leah. The Lord has truly blessed her. 2 born to her maid, 2 born to Rachel's maid, and eventually 2 born to Rachel herself. The remarkable thing is that the descendants of these 12 boys identify themselves even to this day by their tribe. The Jewish people know which tribe they belong to, and in the book of Revelation we have the witness to God continuing through the 12 tribes of Israel. Well, in fact, Dan is missed out, but the tribe of Joseph is represented twice, because Joseph received the double blessing, being the one of these 12 that stands out above the rest. Each of the children has a special name given to them by their mother, by Leah or Rachel. The maid's children are counted to their mistress. And the description is full of references to the name of the Lord. God remembered Rachel. God has given me my wages. God has judged my case. He has also heard my voice and given me a son. So there was strife between them, but they were all calling upon the Lord. The Lord was very dominant in their thinking. This was a family that was seeking God. And this was no doubt stimulated by Jacob himself, as he recalled that dream he had had, with the Lord promising to be with him. So in the midst of all this strife, God is still there. In the midst of strife that we might have, even with our brothers and sisters, God is still there with us. And each of us must take our cares and our concerns to the Lord, for he cares for us.